A senior Russian security figure is responding to the U.S. strike on Venezuela with language that goes far beyond diplomacy. The message is not just condemnation, it is a warning, and it is already reverberating far beyond Caracas. Russia's response to the U.S. operation in Venezuela has landed with force. Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council and a close ally of President Vladimir Putin, issued a blistering public statement within hours of the attack. Medvedev accused Washington of carrying out what he called an act of aggression against an independent country that posed no direct threat to the United States. He described the operation as a violent seizure of a legally elected leader, carried out, he said, under the banner of so-called international law. He also pointed to what he described as silence from Europe, arguing that democratic capitals quickly looked away while the United States acted decisively in Latin America. Medvedev then turned his focus elsewhere, mocking Ukraine's leadership and accusing Washington of misdirected priorities. His remarks were laced with sarcasm, aimed at both Kyiv and its Western backers. But it was his final conclusion that drew the most attention. Medvedev argued that the events in Caracas prove one thing above all else, that any country wishing to protect itself must strengthen its military to the maximum. According to Medvedev, the only guarantee against foreign intervention is a nuclear arsenal. He ended his statement with a phrase that immediately set off alarm bells ringing far beyond Russia. "Long live nuclear weapons," he wrote, framing the U.S. strike on Venezuela as proof that power, not diplomacy, defines survival in today's world.
The shockwaves from Washington's strike on Venezuela are already rippling far beyond Latin America. Moscow was among the first capitals to respond, and its words were sharp, deliberate, and unmistakable. Calling the U.S. action armed aggression, Russia has drawn a red line around sovereignty, escalation, and global stability. As confusion deepens in Caracas, the diplomatic and military fallout is accelerating. Russia reacted swiftly and forcefully. In a rare early morning statement, Moscow accused the United States of committing an act of armed aggression against Venezuela, condemning the strike and warning that escalation could spiral beyond control. The Russian Foreign Ministry rejected Washington's justification outright, calling it untenable. Moscow said ideological hostility had overtaken diplomacy and that trust, predictability, and pragmatism had been abandoned in favor of force. Russia urged all sides to step back. Dialogue, it said, must replace military pressure. Moscow reaffirmed its position that disputes, no matter how severe, must be resolved through negotiation, not bombardment. The message was pointed. Latin America must remain a zone of peace. Venezuela, Russia said, has the right to determine its own future, free from external military interference. Moscow declared its solidarity with the Venezuelan people and voiced support for the country's Bolivarian leadership, framing the crisis as a test of sovereignty, not just for Venezuela, but for international order. Russia also backed calls from Caracas and regional leaders for an emergency session of the UN Security Council, signaling that this confrontation is now headed for the world's highest diplomatic arena. Even as statements flew, uncertainty deepened on the ground. Venezuela's vice president admitted the government did not know the whereabouts of President Nicolás Maduro or the First Lady. That admission came hours after President Donald Trump claimed U.S. forces had carried out a large-scale strike and that Maduro and his wife had been captured and removed from the country. Venezuela's defense minister moved quickly. Vladimir Padrino ordered a full deployment of the armed forces, confirming attacks on multiple sites and calling on troops to stand firm and carry out presidential orders. Russia's embassy in Caracas says it remains operational, in constant contact with Venezuelan authorities and Russian citizens. Moscow reports no casualties among Russian nationals, for now. But the warning stands. From Moscow's view, this is no isolated strike. It is a dangerous precedent, one that risks dragging the region and the world into deeper confrontation.
The Bolivarian National Armed Forces informed the entire world that in the early hours of today, January 3rd, the Venezuelan people have been subjected to the most criminal military aggression by the government of the United States of America. So far, the barbarity of the invading forces that have desecrated our sacred soil in the areas of Fuerte Tiuna, Caracas, and the states of Miranda, Aragua, and La Guaira has reached the point of striking with their missiles and rockets fired from combat helicopters into residential areas populated by civilians. We are currently gathering information regarding the wounded and the dead.
Venezuela issued its first response after the U.S. military attacked the Latin American nation overnight on Saturday after the orders of President Donald Trump. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro declared state of emergency in the wake of the U.S. attack. Maduro further ordered all national defense plans to be implemented, Venezuelan Foreign Ministry revealed. It is now also calling on all national forces to step up mobilization plans. In a statement, the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry said, "The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela rejects, repudiates, and denounces before the international community the extremely serious military aggression perpetrated by the current government of the United States of America against Venezuelan territory and population in the civilian and military locations of the city of Caracas, capital of the Republic, and the states of Miranda, Aragua, and La Guaira." This act constitutes a flagrant violation of the United Nations Charter, particularly its Articles 1 and 2, which enshrine respect for sovereignty, the legal equality of states, and the prohibition on the use of force. Such aggression threatens international peace and stability, specifically in Latin America and the Caribbean, and puts the lives of millions of people at grave risk. The objective of this attack is none other than to seize Venezuela's strategic resources, particularly its oil and minerals, attempting to break the nation's political independence by force. They will not succeed. After more than 200 years of independence, the people and their legitimate government remain steadfast in defense of sovereignty and the inalienable right to decide their own destiny. The attempt to impose a colonial war to destroy the republican form of government and force a regime change in alliance with the fascist oligarchy will fail, just like all previous attempts. Meanwhile, reports have suggested that Maduro has fled his presidential palace after U.S. strikes. Military tanks have rolled out on the streets of Caracas at the presidential palace. The Venezuelan president said, and I quote, "President Nicolás Maduro has ordered all national defense plans to be implemented at the appropriate time and circumstances, in strict adherence to the provisions of the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the Organic Law on States of Exception, and the Organic Law on National Security." In this regard, President Nicolás Maduro has signed and ordered the implementation of the decree declaring a state of external commotion throughout the national territory to protect the rights of the population, the full functioning of republican institutions, and to immediately proceed to armed struggle. The entire country must activate to defeat this imperialist aggression. Likewise, he has ordered the immediate deployment of the Command for the Comprehensive Defense of the Nation and the direction organs for comprehensive defense in all states and municipalities of the country.
In strict adherence to Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, Venezuela reserves the right to exercise legitimate defense to protect its people, its territory, and its independence. We call on the people and governments of Latin America, the Caribbean, and the world to mobilize in active solidarity against this imperialist aggression. As Supreme Commander Hugo Chavez Frias pointed out, in the face of any circumstance of new difficulties, no matter how great, the response of all patriots is unity, struggle, battle, and victory.
Meanwhile, not just aerial assault, but the U.S. military also started a land invasion of Venezuela. Unconfirmed reports suggest that the U.S. Marine Corps invaded several Venezuelan islands. In the early hours of Saturday morning, Venezuela's capital was rocked by explosions. And now, U.S. officials are confirming a major escalation. According to CBS News, U.S. President Donald Trump ordered strikes on sites inside Venezuela, including military facilities, as Washington sharply intensified its campaign against the government of President Nicolás Maduro. Sources tell CBS News the Trump administration is aware of reports of explosions and aircraft over Caracas. But as of now, there has been no official public comment from the White House. On the ground, the situation appears chaotic. Eyewitness videos and journalist reports describe missile-like strikes, low-flying aircraft, and power outages across parts of the capital. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro issued an urgent warning to the world. He said, "Right now they are bombing Caracas. They are bombing with missiles. The OAS and the UN must meet immediately." The U.S. military has acknowledged reports of explosions in Caracas, but a Pentagon spokesperson refused to confirm or deny any American involvement, according to the New York Times. Witnesses reported activity at least 6 sites, including areas near Fort Tuna Army Base, La Carota Air Base, the 23 de Enero neighborhood, and in the vicinity of Miraflores Palace, the presidential residence. Venezuelan Defense Minister Diosdado Cabello's home at Fort Tuna Base was reportedly hit by shelling. Meanwhile, unverified footage circulating online shows Venezuelan forces detaining residents near the presidential palace as armored vehicles and tanks reportedly move toward the seat of power. In other videos, still unconfirmed, locals are heard screaming, "The Marines! The Marines have arrived!" Additional footage claims to show American forces storming Venezuelan ports and what appears to be U.S. Air Force strikes on Venezuelan army bases.
I believe that a few minutes before 2 a.m., at least in the part of Caracas where I live, which is downtown Caracas, the electricity went down, and immediately explosions and aircraft noise was, I hear that. A few minutes later, I managed to dress up and go outside, and we have been reporting live since that moment.
As the videos spread, Caracas remains tense and the international community scrambling to respond. This would mark the most direct U.S. military action on Venezuelan soil in decades, following months of threats, naval deployments, and strikes tied to alleged drug trafficking networks.